Welcome back. This one begins with a book no one was meant to see. At Harrow House, grief wore black velvet, and money sat at the head of every table. Evelyn Mercer stood alone by the service corridor when a blue leather ledger slipped from a catering cart and opened at her feet. Inside were signatures, dates, funeral expenses, house calls. Then one line, fresh and cruel, estate transfer confirmed. She knew that handwriting. Or thought she did. Her father had been buried 40 minutes earlier, and already somebody had packed his life into a clean little lie. Through the crack in the parlor door, she saw Lorraine Pike, Bennett's caregiver, standing beside the receiving line in a simple black dress, one hand folded over her chest like a saint. Around her, Evelyn's uncles bowed their heads and kept talking in tight, hungry voices. Lorraine should have been invisible. Instead, she was being treated like family. Worse. Like authority. Evelyn turned another page. At the bottom, under a bank invoice, her father's initials appeared beside a date from 3 days after his last hospital visit. The stroke had already taken his right side. He could barely hold a spoon. Someone had signed for him. Someone had made the paper obey. Evelyn closed the ledger slowly. If she said a word now, they would call her grieving. If she waited, they would bury the proof with the body. Bennett Mercer had built a company, a house, and a family that all looked polished from far away. Up close, everything was dented. His wife, Marjorie, wore pearls so sharp they seemed like a warning. Her brothers, Calvin and Reed, had already found a corner by the buffet and were measuring each other with inherited suspicion. Evelyn stood near the memorial portrait with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles blanched. She had not cried in public. That was enough for Marjorie to notice. Marjorie always noticed the wrong thing. "You look pale, Evelyn. Try not to make this about you." There it was. Same old cut, same old tone. Too sensitive. Too emotional. Too unreliable. Evelyn had heard it since childhood, whenever she asked for the truth and got told to lower her voice. Lorraine crossed the room carrying a tray of coffee cups. She moved carefully, head down, each step measured like she had studied the family from the edges and learned how to survive it. Bennett's last 6 months had belonged to her. Medication. Meals. Appointments. The house keys. And now the room looked at Lorraine with a new and poisonous attention. Not as help. As opportunity. Evelyn heard the whispers. Everyone did. Nobody corrected them, which made Lorraine feel more dangerous than innocent. At the edge of the room, a framed copy of Bennett's obituary sat beside the guest book. Evelyn caught sight of the blue leather ledger again, tucked half under a floral arrangement near the service table. Someone had tried to hide it, or forgotten it in a hurry. She reached for it. A hand touched her wrist first. Lorraine's. Soft grip. Cold fingers. Not here. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Evelyn looked up into a face arranged for sympathy and saw calculation under it, quick as a knife flash. Lorraine let go before anyone else could notice. Across the room, Marjorie was staring straight at them. Not at the ledger. At Evelyn. Like the sight of her near anything legal was already a threat. A cousin lowered her phone. Somebody had started recording. The funeral had turned into surveillance. Evelyn slid the ledger into her coat and made a choice that cost her dignity. She said nothing. Not yet. But every face in that room now belonged to the problem. The attorney arrived with a velvet case and the kind of face that had learned to survive rich families. He set the papers on the mahogany table. Marjorie sat upright. Calvin leaned forward. Reed crossed his arms. Evelyn stood because no chair had been offered to her. This is Bennett Mercer's final estate packet. There is also an updated trust directive dated 9 days before his passing. Updated. A word that could mean anything and still destroy everything. Lorraine remained near the doorway, hands folded, eyes lowered. The room was already deciding what kind of woman she was. Primary residence, personal accounts, and controlling interest in Mercer Holdings are bequeathed to Lorraine Pike. The room did not shout. It exhaled. That was worse. Marjorie's face went white under makeup. Calvin made a sound like he had swallowed a stone. Reed looked directly at Evelyn, expecting fire. Read that again. The estate is divided per instructions. Lorraine Pike is sole beneficiary of the home and administrative control, with limited cash distributions to family members outlined in Schedule C. Sole beneficiary. The phrase landed like a slap. Evelyn felt every eye turn to her at once, as if she had personally written the humiliation into the document. That woman cleaned his pill cups. And now she owns the house? Sounds like somebody got close enough to earn it. Lorraine's chin lifted a fraction. Not proud. Defended. Or cornered. Your father made his choices. That sentence froze the room. Bennett had been a tyrant, but he had been their tyrant. Nobody spoke of his choices unless they wanted to sound loyal or dangerous. Evelyn's hand found the ledger in her coat. She was not ready. Not yet. The lawyer kept reading, and with each line the family shrank into stunned, public need. Marjorie whispered something to her brother. Evelyn heard one word, contest. Then the lawyer's phone buzzed. He checked it once, frowned, and said the sentence that changed the air. There is also a sealed note concerning prior testamentary documents. It was signed for by your father's notary and held in escrow until after burial. Prior testamentary documents. Evelyn looked up sharply. That meant the packet was not the first paper. It was the replacement. Or the cover. Marjorie turned toward Evelyn with the fury of a woman who refused to be embarrassed in front of help. If you have been whispering in his ear for months, I swear, I had not been allowed in his room half the time. That was true. It also sounded like an accusation. The room heard instability. They always did. The attorney looked from face to face and decided, wisely, to keep moving. But the humiliation had already taken root. By the time people spilled outside for air, the story had already escaped the room. That was how dynasties fell now. One attorney. One sentence. Then everyone shared it before the dead man's flowers could wilt. Evelyn stood under the portico while rain clicked off the awning. Her Aunt Vera had posted something. So had Calvin's wife. The words were too clean to be kind, shocking, manipulative, caregiver scandal, dementia concern. There it was. The family's favorite weapon. Not facts. Tone. If Bennett was confused, this could be invalid. Or if somebody isolated him. They looked not at Lorraine first, but at Evelyn. Because she was the daughter who had not been seen enough in the last year. Because she had missed dinners, missed calls, missed a few birthdays when work ran late and guilt arrived too late to fix anything. That was her wound. The family knew it. They twisted it by the hour. Evelyn said she had asked to see him. Marjorie said she protected Bennett from her moods. A few heads turned. One cousin made a tiny sound of agreement. The old story returned with ease. Evelyn was unstable. Emotional. Hard to manage. A daughter who wanted too much from a dying man. Lorraine stepped out from the shadow of the doorway and held a rain-slick umbrella over the edge of the portico. Her face was tired now. Not triumphant. Tired like somebody who had spent months carrying a secret with no clean way to set it down. I did not steal your father. I took care of him when others would not come. Then show me the paper. Lorraine did not answer. That silence hit harder than any shout. It suggested there was a paper. Or worse, that she knew exactly what was in it. A black town car rolled up. One of Bennett's board members, Miles Dane, stepped out and froze when he saw the crowd. He took in the phones, the rain, the morning faces. Then he saw the attorney's folder under Evelyn's arm. No one told me there was a readout tonight. That mattered. If the board was surprised, then Lorraine's control was incomplete. Evelyn caught the glint of opportunity and moved before fear could stop her. She opened the blue ledger under the portico light. Inside, tucked between invoice tabs, was a carbon copy receipt from Northgate Notary Services. Same week as the new trust. Same day as Bennett's medication change. One name repeated on the witness line twice, Delia Brooks. Lorraine's church friend. The woman who came by with casseroles and always left before dinner. Evelyn looked up. The family saw the change in her face and mistook it for breakdown. It was not. It was focus. Somebody here helped build this. Nobody answered. Rain kept falling. Phones kept recording. And for the first time, Lorraine looked directly at Evelyn as if she had finally met a threat worth fearing. Evelyn did not sleep. At dawn she drove across town with the ledger on the passenger seat and rain still drying on her cuffs. She had chosen not to call the family. That mattered. For once, she wanted proof before permission. Northgate Notary Services looked ordinary in the worst possible way. Beige walls. Cheap framed law degree. One small flag drooping near the reception desk. Behind the counter sat a clerk named Doreen, who had the face of someone who remembered everything and trusted nothing. I need records for Bennett Mercer's signing. Last month. Maybe earlier. Do you have a subpoena? Evelyn laid the blue ledger on the counter instead. Then the receipt. Then one hospital discharge note showing Bennett was medicated heavily the morning of the supposed signing. Doreen's eyes moved across the pages and stopped. Not on the name. On the seal copy. That stamp is wrong. She said it so softly that Evelyn almost missed it. Then Doreen stood, locked the front door, and pulled a gray archive box from beneath the counter. She was pale now. Angry, too. Like someone had been waiting for a day to say no. He came in twice. First time, he was with Marjorie and his old attorney. We notarized a standard trust amendment. Fine. Legal. Second time, Lorraine brought him alone. She said he wanted to correct an error. She did not bring a witness list. She brought 2 church ladies and a hospital transport form. One was Delia Brooks. The form says Bennett was lucid. It also says he signed with his right hand. He could not. Not then. Evelyn felt the room narrow. The whole ugly shape of it began to appear. Lorraine had not only been near the paperwork. She had staged the conditions around it. The right hand. The witness pool. The convenient transport. Doreen slid out a scanned copy from the archive. Evelyn saw it at once. Bennett's signature on the contested will bent in the wrong place, too smooth at the end, the line of the T crossing too high. Her father's real signatures, tucked in the folder, were uneven from tremor and stroke. This one was confident. Practiced. Someone traced from an older signature card. Bank copy, maybe. Or one of those scanned estate forms. It is a good forgery. Not perfect. But good enough for people who want to believe it. There is something else. She handed over a deposit receipt. Safe deposit box. Bank branch on Mercer Avenue. One access note from Bennett, signed 6 months earlier. One addendum in his own hand, only Evelyn may open after burial. Evelyn's throat tightened. Her father had trusted her with something after all. Not love, maybe. But trust. Enough to leave a map. If you go, do not go alone. Outside, the world kept moving as if inheritance fraud were only office work. Evelyn took the packet, pressed it to her chest, and left before anyone could see her hands shaking. Evelyn did not go home first. She drove straight to the bank with the packet from Doreen and a black coat still smelling of funeral lilies. This time she brought evidence, not anger. Anger could be dismissed. Evidence required paperwork. The bank officer checked the access note and led her into a steel room that hummed like a held breath. Inside the box waited a smaller envelope, yellowed at the edges, with Bennett's initials on the flap. The handwriting was weak, but the seal was intact. Dad. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten codicil dated 3 months before the contested trust. It named Marjorie as temporary administrator, not owner. It named Lorraine as paid caregiver through a separate account. And on the final line, under a blotted signature, Bennett wrote that any later transfer to Lorraine would require independent witness review and a neurologist's note. There was more. A memo clipped behind it from Bennett's old attorney. He had suspected pressure. He had warned Marjorie once. He had been ignored. Now the paper connected everything. The first will was not only forged. It was rewritten over a real safeguard. The phone started buzzing. Marjorie. Calvin. Reed. Lorraine. The family had realized the box had opened. The air had changed. Evelyn answered Marjorie first on speaker. Let them hear her steady now. I found Dad's codicil. Where are you? At the bank. And the first will is forged. Silence. Clean. Final. Then Marjorie's voice came back, colder than Evelyn expected. Do not bring this into the house. You mean the house Lorraine inherited? That landed. Somewhere in the background, a man coughed. Reed or Calvin. The old queen could no longer control the room from one side of a phone. Your father was dying. If he made mistakes, that is not the same as theft. There it was. Her motive. Not pure greed. Control. Preservation. Marjorie had always believed she was protecting the Mercer name from scandal, from decline, from Evelyn's questions, from Bennett's private humiliations. If Lorraine became the useful heir, the family could keep the house quiet. Keep the board calm. Keep the empire from cracking. It was ugly. It was also believable. That was what made it dangerous. Evelyn told them to meet her in the dining room in 1 hour. All of them. If anyone stayed away, she would hand it to the press and the probate judge. She did not wait for permission. She walked out of the vault room with the codicil in a folder against her ribs. For the first time since the funeral, her steps sounded like someone who could not be pushed aside anymore. The dining room had hosted birthdays, board dinners, and one terrible Christmas in which nobody spoke for 40 minutes. Tonight it became a courtroom without robes. Evelyn stood at the head of the table. Marjorie sat at the far end like a monarch who had lost her map. Lorraine stayed near the sideboard, hands folded, face unreadable. The attorney was present again, along with Miles Dane and a notary brought in under emergency notice. Evelyn placed 3 items on the table. The ledger. The safe deposit codicil. The Northgate forgery copy. The sound of each paper landing was small. The effect was not. Dad left a valid codicil. It makes Marjorie temporary administrator only. Then someone replaced the estate packet with this forged trust. No. The notary record shows a fake witness lineup. The signature was traced. The hospital transport form was altered. And Delia Brooks was paid under the table through Lorraine's church relief account. Lorraine's eyes closed for 1 second. Not surprise. Fatigue. That tiny movement told Evelyn the truth had landed where it hurt. We also have board concern about fiduciary interference. Marjorie finally lost her composure. Not in screaming. In posture. She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor like a warning shot. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted the board sniffing around my husband's decline? He was failing. He was ashamed. He begged me to keep Lorraine nearby because she was calm. He begged me to keep you away because every visit became a fight. That part was true enough to sting. Evelyn felt the room shift. She had been difficult. She had argued hard. She had pulled away when Bennett grew weak and unreachable. That did not make the forgery honest. But it made the family's contempt easier to dress as concern. Then Lorraine spoke. Quiet. Final. I did sign papers. I should not have. Bennett promised my son's treatment money if I kept the house stable. I believed him. I believed Marjorie too. Then the second packet came. Then the money got bigger. Then I was in it. Nobody moved. That was the worst part. Not innocence. Complicity. Lorraine had not started as a cartoon villain. She had started as a woman trying to save her son and keep a roof under a collapsing arrangement. Then she chose silence every time the lie deepened. The notary looked down and confirmed the forged seal. The attorney confirmed the codicil. Miles Dane confirmed the board would freeze transfers until probate. Marjorie sat back down very slowly, as if gravity had become personal. Evelyn did not smile. She did not need to. She had wanted the truth to stand, and now it did. Lorraine was removed from administrative control that night. The house and company were placed under probate review. Marjorie lost her grip on both. Calvin and Reed walked out looking smaller than when they entered. One cousin kept recording until Miles ordered the phones down. The family dynasty did not explode in one glorious instant. It cracked in public, which was worse. It had witnesses. By midnight, the house had emptied by pieces. Not by peace. By shame. The board called emergency council. The attorney drafted freezes. Marjorie retreated upstairs without looking at anyone. Calvin and Reed left without speaking to each other. Lorraine sat alone in the front hall until an ambulance took her son's treatment fund paperwork to a judge's office for review. That was the cost. Not only money. Dignity. Access. The soft social armor that had let the Mercer name glide through rooms for decades. It was gone now. Evelyn stood in the hallway with the original codicil in her hand. She had not won cleanly. She had missed years. She had snapped back too late in some ways, too harshly in others. She had threatened the press. She had used humiliation as leverage because polite grief had never protected her father, and it had not protected her either. That was the bruise left open for anyone who wanted to argue later. Did she save justice, or only weaponize shame better than they did? Inside the last packet was one final note from Bennett. Not a legal document. A father's line. 3 words. Trust nobody quickly. Beneath it was a bank key and a name Evelyn did not know. A storage unit. Paid for 6 months ahead. What did you hide? She turned at the sound of heels. Lorraine stood at the end of the hall, no longer caregiver, no longer heir, just a woman in a borrowed black coat with eyes that had run out of defenses. There is one more box. If you want it, go now. Before Marjorie does. Evelyn stared at her. Even now, Lorraine could not stop being strategic. Even ruined, she was still offering a move, not an apology. Evelyn hated her for it. She also knew enough now to take the warning. She closed her fist around the bank key. Then she walked toward the back stairs, leaving behind a family that had paid in public and a house that would never sound the same again. And that is how Harrow House learned grief can become a ledger. Some truths save the wrong people. Some lies break the right ones first. If you want another story where the will reads like a weapon, stay close. Next one cuts even deeper.